I wanted to briefly talk about combat mindset, or at least a warrior's mindset, however you want to think of it. Now, a lot of this has to do with, how you're going to be successful and use your training to your advantage, because you can go to as many classes as you want, but without that will to survive and really dominate the situation, you're gonna have problems. All right. So, number one, one of the things that I grew from, like medical training, the way to stay calm and actually give your patient the best care possible is to be able to think clearly. Now, the best way to do that is keep your heart rate as low as possible. There may be given stress, like you may encounter a car wreck where there's kids hurt, but at the same time, yes, pediatrics take priority in medical. That's just kind of standard because they don't have as much blood or whatever. But if two people are hemorrhaging, an adult and a child, you want to go for the child because they don't have as much to be able to spare as far as loss. So, anyways, this isn't a medical video, but this is just talking about the best way you can give care to your patients is to basically keep your heart rate down. That means not running to a scene, not hyperventilating, staying very almost emotionally detached to the situation, and being, I guess you could say, compassionate to the situation, but also not getting emotionally drawn into it. So when you're in a self-defense situation, a lot of times it starts with a conflict of some sort. Now, if it starts with somebody trying to argue with you, this is where you basically detach from the situation. You take your ego out, you take any kind of defensive characteristics out, like somebody commenting on your wife or your family or whatever. You detach yourself from the situation and realize that, however you need to do it. If you are, if you don't see that you did anything wrong and this person's just coming out of the blue and being a jerk, then just remember that they're probably having the worst day of their life and they want to drag people down with them or do something about it to make themselves feel better, or they just are having the worst life of their life where they're just impulsive. And instead of trying to teach that person a lesson and getting yourself in legal jeopardy or pushing yourself to the point where you become a liability to your family and your community, maybe you need to take your ego down and just be silent or just de-escalate the situation and, verbally take care of the situation if you can. Now, on the flip side of that, if you are in an ambush or something of that nature where somebody's like trying to carjack you or treat you as a victim, again, not reacting emotionally would be a good sign. But this puts us at the next part of it, signs and lines. So lines is like lines in the sand. You have your standards for based on your local laws. You need to base a lot of your standards, like your lines in the sand, based on make sure they're based on your local laws for self-defense, like deadly force or use of force in general. Because even if you're going to whoop them and with bare fists, you need to be compliant with your local laws. If they're just getting a little too close to you or whatever and being verbal, you may not be able to use force against them. However, there's other laws where you can actually defend yourself if they're presenting themselves, and if you can actually articulate body language that you interpreted as an immediate threat, then force can be authorized, but that doesn't necessarily mean deadly force, right? So common sense kind of has that, pre-laid out for you. So that's where signs comes in, like body language and stuff. So it is on you to learn body language, not think, oh, well, I just know body language. Do a little bit of reading and stuff and how the mind kind of controls the body. And the next one is actions, actions, actions. So that's why it's got the power of 3. So actions, actions, actions. So once you've decided somebody's crossed the line in the sand, you need to have a understood reaction to those behaviors, and not second guess and not have to process all that information ahead of time. I would save a lot of that processing power under stress, because you will be under stress regardless of how they're behaving. Their actions should be dictating your actions, and then you need to take action. That's why it's to the power of 3. You know, their actions dictate your actions, and then you need to take action. It's all about actually doing something about it. And if you don't and you hesitate, there's going to be a problem. But also, when you're under stress, you're going to lose processing ability. So you're going to be limited on your ability to task switch and stuff like that. You're going to give more priority to the threat. And that's why analysis of what they're doing, and if they're crossing those lines in the sand, and looking for those trigger points like signs and, you know, lines in the sand, their movement, their behavior, and then associating whether it's a trigger point for your actions based on their actions. So then you make taking action a reaction. So I know that's controversial because they talk about responding, but the responding part is actually analyzing their behavior and having lines in the sand, because, you know, a gunfight, if they're armed, you don't have very much time to defend yourself, and gunfights do not last very long. It's not like, you know, a big shootout or whatever. It's going to be a very quick, and you have to decide that based on your actions and your lines in the sand, for instance. So make sure that your lines in the sand are going to actually lead to action and, you know, reaction. And save that processing capacity for maneuvers to your given environment, and the basic analysis for what's going on, and also situational awareness. That kind of goes to movement. You kind of need to be aware of your surroundings in order to be able to handle the situation. And then once you have taken action, you got to handle the situation from there too. You're going to have to call dispatch. You're going to have to get units on the way, give enough information to be helpful, but not too much information to self-incriminate, right? So it's more than just that stupid saying of better judged by 12 than carried by 6, because those 12 are basically, you know, I hate to say this, but they're the people not smart enough to get out of jury duty, and they're probably not really your peers. So you might as well be carried by 6, because your family's going to be without a father or mother, you know, whatever the case may be. So with all that said, that's my little rundown on mindset in times of stress and handling that. And it's very simple, but it's all about making sure your brain can process that information so you can actually function, because the idea of human nature is surprise, speed, and violence of action. If you're going to attack somebody, you want that advantage naturally, so a lot of people will, you know, give off signs that will potentially scare the other person and get inside their OODA loop. So just be aware of that. That's how human beings are. And so that's how violence really starts, and that's why you've got to be prepared, and you've got to drill these things so you can save that processing speed and respond in the best way possible. So with all that said, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and you guys have a good one.